ZVZ. Where did he actually fall? In ZVP. He had the chance to actually take the qualifiers a little bit earlier. The qualifier before he actually made it, he met up in the finals against Arthur, who is now in our league. That's a ZVP, but he just could not connect the dots together to actually get himself that win. But of course, Mana's a very different player than Arthur, and we're going to see that right here on Ohana.
Starting from the bottom right, from Team Mouse Sports, we have Mana, who has a lot of G's in his first name. You ever try to say? I always like you get blown away. It's like Gruzgu. Yeah, it's something like Grigu. I thought it was like Gregor at first, but it's like it's Grizgluz.
It feels like there should be a vowel somewhere.
Yeah, at least one vowel in the first name, but it's actually really tough to say. In the top left, we have, formerly from Team Slayers, it is Dark. Well, actually, to be fair, Slayers will disband on November 3rd, so it's still official to call it Slayers. But it's disbanding in just under a couple of weeks, guys. Not Sella. Dark is, just like you said, Andre, a phenomenal ZVZ player with his use of infestors. But when we saw him play against players like Alicia, and some of the other players, it just seemed like he struggled a lot with being able to handle standard mid-game Colossus pushes. It just felt like he died, because before he can get his Infestor count up, before he can play heavy army control, like with late-game macro, it just seems like he couldn't hold off simple pushes.
That's right, and I feel like Mana, as I was talking about before, loves to do those type of pushes. And on Ohana, I think getting the third base, it's not relatively easy, but it's there. He's definitely capable of getting it. I actually predicted Mana to win this series just because of, I guess, Dark's inability to really hold off that 2-3 base aggression.
Yeah, I know what, I picked Dark because I just want him to show better ZVP. And I don't have any real basis to clarify that, because Dark's lost in his qualifiers for ZVP. He's lost in ZVP against Alicia very badly, and it just seemed like it wasn't very impressive display of Zerg versus Protoss. But I want to believe, Andre, this was like a gut pick, because I know Mana on paper is such a smart player. Like when Mana was playing against Damaga in the DreamHack Open, that you guys saw on the player card. He knows Damaga loves going Zerg and Baneling, especially with drops. So what does he choose to do? Instead of going for standard Immortal Sentry, which like Baneling drops to completely destroy, he goes Zealot Archon, so that Archons can absorb the blows, Zealots can get in position, and he's able to really hit a good timing. Those kinds of things I would think makes Mana such a smart player, and I'm very happy to see him succeed.
Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, the fact of the matter is he has so much high-level performance experience, whereas Dark, we haven't really seen him in any big tournaments or even online cups. So I feel like overall Mana is the much more experienced player. He is, the player that I think is more willing to change. Even though I haven't seen too many games of Dark, I really feel like we've seen the same type of style in all of his matchups, just that infestor-heavy style, which is good, but you don't want to get too many infestors in this matchup, because Broodlords are a high priority when you go into that mid-end game. And that's something that we've been seeing, a lack of Spire tech from Dark, and I really feel like if he scales off a little bit on those infestors at mid-game and focuses more on getting, maybe even Spine Crawlers plus Corruptors, he'll be in a much, much better situation.
Yeah, that's early Zerg style is just... It's so hard for Protoss to approach it, because they have no way to kind of attack stack defense without putting them in extreme vulnerable position. Like Colossus can poke down Spine Crawlers, but they're so vulnerable in that spot. That's what the Tempest really is trying to do.
It's so cool actually seeing Spine Crawler, Corruptor, Infestor do so well. I mean, that's really what Zerg is most powerful at, because even if the Colossus get in range and try to outrange everything, immediately a fungal growth goes down and you isolate the Colossus immediately with the Corruptors. And that's something that's super powerful. But right now, just talking about the game, we do have the very standard Stefano style opening. You can see 2 extractors going down on 6 minutes. There have been, I think, a lot of shakeups in ZVP early game, where we actually see delayed extractors at the cost of something like a faster drone count, which actually leads to a faster macro hatchery. So in effect, more units, but it's not really the upgrades that you can really get out super fast.
Just like you said, Andre, Roach Warren and Evo Chamber, very standard 3-base Roach opening. from Dark, and there's nothing really too particularly special about that. On the flip side, Mana going for a super quick Immortal off of his robotics facility, so skipping the first Observer, and this is gearing up for a fast 3 Immortal push. Now, I've been talking about this with Todd, Le Todd from Team Root, and he's saying how the 3 Immortal push is just becoming really strong. You don't have to necessarily warp in sentries immediately. You focus on getting the Immortals out super quickly and just add gates in 3s. 3 gates and then push out Immortals. 3 gates and then push out your 3rd Immortal and go. And he says it's a very effective push, but Zergs have learned to shut it down so effectively that he feels like it's not even that strong of a build anymore relative to the metagame today.
It definitely depends. I think you know, a lot of players have actually tried to exhaust the amount of options that you can do to defend against something like a 3 Immortal plus Warp Prism Pressure. Comes around 9 minutes and 30 seconds normally. That's when Protoss like to push out. And then you get to your opponent's base around 10 minutes to 10 minutes and 30 seconds. That's way before Infestors can be out and operational. And it's also, you know, you're also hitting before Spire Tech. So a lot of the Lair Tech stuff is gone. And you have to mainly rely on Zerglings and Roaches. So how many Zerglings and Roaches can be popped out in time? That's going to be the big question for them.
Yep, Warp Prism also included with the Immortals is a nice way. And of course, you might be wondering, why does he add the sentries so late? It's because as long as you get a strong positioning on Ohana, sentries, they're effective, of course, but if you tack things like on down the 4th ramp and able to section off accordingly, picking your spots is extremely important, and you can preserve the Immortal anyway if you use a good Warp Prism. So we can see that Mana's pushing out right now. It's pretty standard time. How has Dark really dealt with this? He didn't spread creep from his 3rd out. He spread from the natural down. And now he's starting to make Spine Crawlers, but the Spine Crawlers might be a little bit late, Andre.
Yeah, I think these Spine Crawlers are really out of place, to be completely honest. I mean, I've seen styles like Suppy actually try to do something like this, but a lot of times these Spine Crawlers just say, I'm not prepared for this. Even though I feel like Dark has kind of done the best build possible to actually defend against this. Maybe the delayed extractors would have been a little bit better, but I don't know. I feel like these Spine Crawlers just don't make too much sense.
You can see Mana already starting to engage. The 3 Immortals are tucked very nicely away from the Roaches, and Mana also able to push in just in time to hit the Spine Crawlers. The Forces are down on the ramp. Mana getting flanked here, but the Immortals are doing so much good damage, picking them up and making sure that they don't get they basically don't get killed instantly, although there's no support units really left, Andre. There's only Immortals. Mana needs to keep warping in, and he does have only 6 gates. You could kind of squeeze in another one, but Mana wanted to go for speed in the attack, not necessarily just for power.
That's right. And you know, at this point, I think Mana actually losing all those sentries is quite critical. I feel like his entry point is so weird. This is like the perfect area for Zerg to actually go and flank, right? You come in from the left side, you come in from the right side. Yes, you can only force heal twice, and it cuts off this side, but the fact of the matter is, when your units become that exposed, you actually you find a pretty big problem. And I think Mana is just overextending here. He did warp in sentries, which are so useless, but a second Warp Prism going into the main, not really going to do much because 3 Roaches are already in place. I think the better option would have been to attack from over here. That's the standard to actually attack from that 4th base location. I think Mana is really far behind now. Yeah,
but Mana does have a lot of sentries back at home warped in. Just like we were saying, you're trying to add sentries later on to fight for a good initial position as you constantly warp in units, and it just kind of snowballs from there. But Mana never given that opportunity. Instead, Dark's going for a counterattack, and Mana's he's going to have to defend on 2 sides. He does have 2 Immortals with a 3rd coming out, so he should be safe if he has enough force fields. But I don't know. Dark's already starting to transition. He's droning up and starting to add more gases. I think he's just trying to scare Mana into making a wrong move.
That's right. I mean, what this does essentially is actually delays Mana from, I was going to say taking the 3rd base, but he's being bold and taking it anyway. Normally when you see this as Protoss, you're like, oh, okay, well, they're preparing some sort of huge all-in. I see so many units. I need to be so careful. So it actually prolongs something like Colossus. And Colossus is obviously so powerful at large numbers like this. It's going to be tough, but Mana getting some pretty decent forces, but I don't think it is going to be enough. Nicely done, just canceling that 3rd base. I mean, this is what Dark wanted to do, just constantly canceling this 3rd Nexus. While he's droning up, he's getting Infestation Pit directly behind this, so this is great. And furthermore, he's, as I said, delaying that...
the 3rd base.
Delaying the Colossus.
Delaying the Colossus, yes, which in turn delays the third base. Just like you're saying, Andre, Mana with good force fields, but I think Dark just really wants to keep forcing pressure on this third base. If you can get it to constantly cancel, Mana's gas count will continually be his bottleneck. You can see that Mana has a lot of minerals, and he would love to spend it, but in ratio to his gas, it just doesn't have enough. What can he do? Put cannons and zealots, and that's not what he needs right now.
Yeah, it's not looking good for Mana, but he's defending pretty nicely. If Dark gives him more time, actually the sentries come into play a lot more, and they'll be able to do some good stuff. War Prism is going to harass the fourth base, but here we go yet again. Force Fields sectioning off a pretty good amount of roaches. It's enough to actually segment all of those units. A couple will string into the natural, but I don't think it's going to be really that much just because there's an Immortal over there. But here we go. Oh, no! Okay.
The sentries drop a couple of emergency force fields. One Immortal gets picked off again. And this is Dark just doing what he's doing, very, very smart tactics. He's constantly moving back for trying to bait the unit out of position because he was trying to catch the units halfway off the ramp and halfway on it, which, of course, segregates the force field power. Did manage to keep the Immortal count pretty low, starting to get to the point where Mana had a huge number of Immortals and could hold off roaches indefinitely. But will Mana be able to hold off against the Infestor tech? Gateway Immortal is very easy to just lock it down and just continually fungal, and when you have no sentries, you just have to rely on the brute force of Stalkers, and if you don't have that mass count, what can you really do?
That's right, and this whole time, Zergling Roach is actually really light on gas, so it's so helpful because nine Infestors on the way out right now. That's going to be a gigantic advantage at this point for Dark. If he's able to actually connect those fungals, it's beautiful. But here we go again. I really feel like this attack isn't too necessary. He should just be, I guess, trading slightly, but he doesn't need to trade. But look at this little hole, Frodan.
Yeah, the Forge is going to be exposed. A nice snipe there. As Mana can't get +3, which is actually very critical for a mid-game stage of Protoss. +3 Stalkers just really chew into anything that it hits. You can see some nice War Prism harass again from Mana, just trying to limit the base. The Cells are going to race against time, and they will be able to force the cancel. Nice job there, and that's what you need to do to kind of increase your presence on the map. Don't just necessarily turtle back on 3 base, but being able to keep Zerg accountable for their army movements.
Yes, and the counter pressure, I have to say, has been immaculate by Mana. I mean, just making sure that your opponent can't keep up at that stage, can't multitask some sort of huge attack while defending. That's actually a great way to actually relinquish some of your forces, just to buy you a little bit of time, because sentries obviously need a lot of time for their force fields. And good job over here by Mana, but this is going to be tough. Dodging 2 locations. Look at the Infestor count. That's a lot of fungals and infested Terran, Frodan. That's scary.
Yeah, the Infestors are going to drop Infested Terrans before the engagement actually happens. In fact, the force fields aren't really doing anything. It's actually a mass, and this is vintage Dark using Infested Terrans to gain position and battle advantage, because this is empty supply. I mean, he does have some roaches in the mix, but he's using it to buy time so he can snipe the third and then back out of there while getting his own 4th base. +3 has started. Thermal Lance will finish also for Protoss, but Dark was able to trade a bunch of energy, a few roaches, but also keep his Infestors alive.
Yeah, great job taking out the 3rd base, but this is yet again one of Dark's biggest problems. He loves to overdo it with Infestors, and look at how late that Spire Tech is. So if Mana actually opts to go 2 base all in off of this, it might have the potential to work out very well. That's because the Infestors ran out of energy, a lot of them did. Throwing down all those infested Terrans. You don't have Corruptors to actually deal with the army, and Mana's had a pretty respectable supply, 131, but unfortunately that is not his style. Currently, because he knows he's behind, he normally doesn't choose to say, I'm just going to go with it and try my luck, because how he thinks about it is, my opponent should have Spire Tech. So it'd be really silly for me to actually attack forward. So I like his decision overall. Unfortunately, he could have actually opened up a timing for himself to maybe take out this 4th base. That would have been great. But in the meantime, you can see Hive Tech now 20 minutes into the game. This is like patented Dark, where he just delays Hive Tech for just so long.
I mean, when you're keeping your opponent on 2 base the entire time, it may not matter that much. Dark's also starting the massive, massive wall of spine crawlers towards the between his natural and 3rd. And that's what you need to do. He has also a good patch at his 4th base as well. The only thing is that, just like you said, Andre, will he be prepared for the inevitable push with Aspire Tech? And I think he's already bought enough time for it because he's already forced Mono to be so turtly. He has to get his expansions up. Mono's already starting to think about a 4th base potentially because his main is already mined down and his natural's starting to dry up as well.
But what I like about Mana is he's actually gone for the Mothership. That's actually so clever because he's saying, well, if I just mass out in Stalkers and Colossus for the majority of this game, I'm dead. There's no way I can actually stop the Broodlord army. But if I incorporate a Mothership, all of a sudden, you know, that Mothership actually brings that wow factor in that I can come back into this game. And if you've seen game 1 between Mana and Lowly, Mana knows I should never give up because he was behind 3 bases in that game on Daybreak. He was behind in a ridiculous amount of supply. He actually mined out his main, his natural. He only had his 3rd base. Lowly had 4 mining bases, and he loses the game. How? Because he vortexes once and kills like 14 Broodlords in the blink of an eye. It was absolutely crazy, and I think that's what Mana's looking for in this game.
I guess the Hail Mary wouldn't hurt in this scenario. Mana does have, again, just like you said, a respectable amount of supply, and his worker count's not absurdly high either, so his army supply count is already in the triple digits. So, you know, I think Dark still has to kind of respect that. He doesn't have that many Corruptors out, and Greater Spire isn't even finished. So I guess Mana still has a couple more minutes to accumulate his Archon count, really start building up that inevitable Vortex. A nice little trade here from Dark, trying to see if he can force his way, maybe take out a couple important tech structures, but for the most part, both players are being very passive in terms of like in full army engagement. Mana doesn't want to engage for a long time, neither does Dark.
That's right. But yeah, as you said, nice trades. And the Roaches get in and just see the Mothership timing out because the Mothership pops out right as the Roaches are like, oh, I'm going to do something. Oh, dang it.
It's like, yeah, come here, you stalker. And it's like, where'd you go? Stop hiding, you coward.
And this empty, void, cloaked unit is actually attacking. You're like, oh, no. And then you look up, there's a huge shadow. It's the Mothership beaming down a laser that does like 2 points of damage at you. Like, oh.
No, the Mothership does 42 damage, I think.
Does it really?
No, it's 36. 36.
No.
It does 36 damage. It attacks 6 times.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Well.
Don't underestimate him. It's just that it shoots slow. That you always feel like, man, it takes forever to do damage. So it's kind of like a high.
So it actually does 18 damage to Roaches.
Oh, yeah, because of all the armor.
The armor, yeah.
Kind of absurd. But we'll see how Mana is able to really deal with late game army. Again, using Zealots to try to buy time, keep track of the army movement, see the composition, see several Broodlords. But I don't think any kind of Zealot run by would work. I mean, Dark's even got Spinecrawlers at his 3rd and his main, just to be sure of any kind of War Prism play. I like this a lot, being so, like, I guess so generous with his minerals and Spinecrawlers and drone count that he doesn't necessarily have that huge bank of minerals we always see at this stage of the game, saying, I rather value my security of the back door. I don't want to have 15 Zealots diving my Hive Tech where I can't be able to remax.
Yeah. But I think Mana shouldn't even be playing that style. I mean, normally when you're playing that style, you're even, right? You're able to actually throw away minerals at that point. But Mana, because of the early game stage, because he's lost his 3rd base for so many times, he needs to actually say, well, I'm just going to win the 200-200 fights. That's the only thing that he can really think of. Because if he wins one single 200-200 fight, then he'll actually be back into this game. Even though Units Lost tab shows very similar counts, it's the fact that his opponent has been mining a lot longer. And when you're mining that much longer, you have the remax a little bit better. So, oh no! A
lot of the those High Templars, man,
like,
are so lucky.
Ain't no thing. Oh my God!
That was, I guess, a very lucky day to be a High Templar.
Yes, sir. And even a queen. Oh no, queen! Why would you throw away the queen?
Nah, the one queen wants to help Chance use their buddy.
But here's something cool, Frodan. I really like this. Look at these 2 War Prisms on the left-hand side.
Immortal
4
drops.
Immortals.
If they can get out. Mana's like,
dead.
That's going to be very heartbreaking. That's 16 supply. Nope, 20 supply if you count the War Prism.
Yeah.
And that's annoying.
Think how fast that takes out a Greater Spire, though.
Yeah, and I think how fast, and it's durable against Spine Crawlers. That's actually really kind of creative to do that, because then you warp in Zealots to immediately snipe it. Although Mana now has more supply room to add in Archons. I guess that's kind of the silver lining on the cloud. Very, very passive game at this point. Just, again, waiting for the inevitable, will the Vortex get off? Will he get a Neuroparasite off? Does he even have Neuroparasite? Yes, he does. Dark also getting just every single upgrade, finally realizing, okay, I've added enough units. I have enough to remax. I can start getting upgrades. Which is actually kind of curious because Mana's upgrades is slightly higher than his opponent's.
Really? 3-1-1, absolutely right. You can see +2 is being scattered across the production tab, +3 melee attack is up there. But, you know, really it's Dark's move at this point. If he's going to just continue like this, I feel like it's just empowering Mana even more.
Wow.
You know? A lot of people always say, like, oh, when you're ahead, get farther ahead. But they always think taking an extra base is the way you get ahead. Sometimes actually pressuring is the best way. And I felt like Dark, his option was to pressure. It wasn't to sit back and wait. Because you're just so far ahead, why give your opponent the chance? I mean, if you look at the two options, one option is to wait and let your opponent get back into the game, which is what happened already, or actually apply pressure. And I feel like if you judge the two together, putting pressure is the much more profitable way.
You see the Zealots fighting the drones?
Yeah.
It's so funny. And after he killed those 3 drones, oh, hold that thought. The mothership is trying to get into a good flank. Oh, Dark has almost everything clumped. Ooh, the Archon's actually adding some good damage in terms of being able to get some shots.
Oh my god, oh my god.
Mothership getting a little bit too dangerously close. Can he get the Vortex off feedback to prevent any of the Infestors from getting into range? And these Archons are charging forward, fearless against anything that Dirk can do. The Infested Terran wall is too large, though, and Mana forces Storm and Vortex accordingly. That's actually a really smart tactic to stop Mana from advancing.
Yeah, I think at this point Mana actually has a backup. There's just too many Infested Terrans being thrown down. And they actually lost a good number of Colossus. I think 2 Colossus in that last fight. You need the Colossus to clear up the Infested Terrans ASAP. So just get rid of this base. Let it go. It's fine. You still have a pretty respectable count of units. Back up, regroup, get more Archons into your army, and then from there try to get a good 200 engagement. And he's doing everything right. Going ahead, taking the bottom right-hand side base. I feel like counterattacking isn't too necessary, but cleaning up creep is always nice. Because you don't want Spine Crawlers actually going down. Spine Crawlers plus this main army is actually the one way to actually confront the Protoss pretty nicely. But Mana needs to be careful. Oh my god.
Has to be very careful. Mana trying to control this just right. Use the high temp Mars to feed back the Infestors. Land the Vortex. If you can get a Vortex, the Mothership's under siege. The Corruptors immediately get picked off. That means almost the Mothership is practically safe with all the Corruptors in there. And Mana's going to go ahead and use the idea to blink underneath. The Infestors are not there to protect. Where are they? Now they're starting to add the Fungals, but how much of the army was caught in the Vortex? Mana loses his Mothership almost instantaneously. Slayers, Dark, able to take out the Protoss army with very, very nice positioning. The Broodlords using the trees to their advantage.
Yeah, very unfortunate turn of events from Mana. He had to use that Vortex defensively. Once you do that, you actually give up the game, which sounds crazy, but you need a Vortex on these Broodlords. There's no ground army that's actually going to deal with, how many is this? 14 Broodlords? 14 Broodlords is just so gigantic. I don't care what Stalker army you have, this is going to be very cost efficient against that. And that's the big problem. So once you actually use the Vortex defensively for your Mothership, you basically give the game away. And he's trying his hardest, but look at this synergy. Infested Terrans, rather Infestors, plus Broodlords, it's just way too powerful.
The DPS from the Infested Terrans disincentivized any Stalkers from blinking forward. GG. And Dark from Team Slayers takes game number 1 against Mana with, again, patent display of Infested Terran usage and situational awareness. It's actually kind of cool to say, like, okay, well, he's actually going too far in. I need my Infested Terrans to buy time. Sure, you know, I would love to use Fungal, Neural Parasite and stuff, but I at this rate, I'm just going to lose too much position. Says, buy time, Mana drops the Vortex and backs it off. That's actually a cool little tactic there.
That's right. One minor thing I do want to mention, you know when he was actually in the mid left-hand position, Dark was in the mid left-hand position.
Yes,
like,
for the Infested Terrans.
Yeah. Not only the Infested Terrans were popping down, but all of his Broodlords were together and the Corruptors were together. He used a Vortex for the Corruptors. If he actually engaged there, I think it would have been really profitable. And I only say that because there were no Overseers during that battle. Like, it was something pretty major, I think, that if you're able to actually see that, get your High Templars into position and start feedbacking, you actually can win that battle. But I know of course, it's scary for Mana because he's fighting from behind the whole time, so he's respecting his opponent as much as possible and saying, you probably have the necessary defense. I'm just going to back up from here. But just something minor to
My favorite moment from the game was when the Zealot was killing the 3 drones. He felt like such a badass because he didn't lose any health. He only lost shield. And then he charged forward and got met by 6 Broodlords. And it's like, man, you just went from the easiest unit to fight to the hardest in 2 seconds. That escalated very quickly. Guys, that game number 1 was brought to you by Audible. To download a bestseller, go to nasl.tv/p/audible for a special offer. Because that way sometimes you can listen to books as well as read them. We'll be back with game number 2 between Dark versus Mono. Don't go anywhere. We're just getting started for Week 6 Division 3. Lots of games coming up, so stay tuned.